The Golden Goose. Once upon a time there were 3 brothers. The youngest son was given the name of Dummling, and was laughed at by his family and everyone else. One day the eldest son went into the forest to cut some wood. His mother gave him cake and a bottle of wine, and off he went whistling cheerfully. But he had no sooner set to work than a little old man appeared. "I am so hungry and thirsty. May I have some cake and wine?" he asked. But the eldest son shook his head. "Be off with you," he said gruffly. "I will share my meal with no one." But it seemed the old man was going to get his revenge with the very next swing of the axe, for it landed on the oldest son's foot. How he yelled! The next day the second son decided to try his luck, and once again his mother gave him cake and wine. The little old man approached the second son and asked to share his meal, but the second son also refused. He too was cut by the next swing of the axe. The next day Dummling set off for the forest to cut some wood. He was given only bread and water, but was happy to share what he had with the little man. "You are a good boy," said the man, "and if you cut down that tree you will get your reward." Dummling did as he was bid, and was astonished to find a goose covered entirely with golden feathers. "I will go to the city and seek my fortune," Dummling decided. "This beautiful goose will bring me luck." As he strolled along the lane he passed a girl. She gasped to see such a glorious golden bird and stretched out her hand to stroke it. But imagine her dismay when she found that she could not take her hand away. The goose had magic powers, and whoever laid a finger on her soon found themselves stuck fast to her feathers. Before many hours had passed, Dummling had collected 2 more inquisitive girls and a parson, all stuck fast, one behind the other. As they stumbled across the fields they met the bishop. "My dear parson, have you taken leave of your senses?" And he reached out and caught the parson's sleeve. Now he too was stuck fast, and it wasn't long before they were joined by a ploughman and a shepherd. After a time they reached the city, and there in the palace lived the king and his daughter. She had never been known to smile, and the king had promised her hand in marriage to the first person who was able to make her laugh. Well, when the princess saw the 3 girls, the parson, the bishop, the ploughman, and the poor shepherd all falling over one another behind Dumbling's golden goose, she burst into peals of laughter. The king came running, and Dummling lost no time in asking permission to marry the princess. Thought the king to himself. "I do not want this raggle-taggle boy to marry my daughter. I must set him an impossible task to perform, and when he fails, I will be able to refuse him." And so the king told Dummling that before the marriage could take place, he would first have to find a man who could drink a whole cellarful of wine. Dummling scratched his head, and then he remembered the old man in the forest. But when he returned to the glade, the old man was not there. Instead, he found a short man with a miserable face. "Oh my, I'm so terribly thirsty," he moaned. "I've already drunk a barrel of wine, but I feel as if I could drain a lake dry." "You are just the man I'm looking for," cried Dummling, and he led the man to the king's cellar. The fat man rubbed his hands with glee. "This is a sight for sore eyes," the short man declared, and soon he had emptied every bottle, keg, cask, and barrel. The king was more vexed than ever. He decided to set another task, and this time made it even harder. "Find me a man who can eat a whole mountain of bread," he ordered, well satisfied that this would indeed prove impossible. But Dummling went straight to the forest, and there discovered a tall thin man sitting on a log. "I have just had 4 ovenfuls of bread for my supper, but it has barely taken the edge off my appetite. he complained. Dummling pulled at his sleeve. "I know a place where you can eat your fill," he said. When he arrived back at the palace, the cooks set to work and kneaded their dough for a day and a night. When the bread was piled high, it filled the whole courtyard. The tall, thin man ate and ate and ate, and within hours the mountain had become a molehill, and soon there was nothing left at all. Then the king set one last impossible quest. "Find me a ship which can sail both on land and on sea. Only then can you marry my daughter." This time Dummling found the little old man waiting for him in the forest. "I have not forgotten your kindness," he said. "Now look behind you." Then, with a great rustling of canvas, the most magnificent ship sailed into the glade. When the king saw the ship sailing over the fields towards his palace, he knew he would have to give in, and so Dummling and the princess were married. They lived happily ever after, but back at home Dumbling's two brothers grew bitter and miserable, and all for the lack of a good, generous heart.